Hello and welcome to our final preview show of 2020 ahead of Huddersfield Town's game against Blackburn Rovers. As it is our final game of the year, we thought this week's show we'd talk you through the year and give our highs and touch upon some moments, some low moments. And to help us do that, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Stephen Chicken from the Huddersfield Examiner, former Town keeper and BBC Radio Leeds summariser Matt Glennon, and of course Huddersfield Town fan and educating Yorkshire star Matthew Burton. How are you all? You okay?
All good.
Good, thank you.
Fantastic. First of all, did you all have a good Christmas?
Yes.
What would you do if I said no?
I
did actually. I did. It's fine.
Well, it was a bit of a caught in a storm. It was lovely. It was nice to just have a day of normality, and then disappointing result on Boxing Day ruined it. But that's the way it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's football, isn't it, for us? I mean, look, 2020, it's been certainly an interesting year from a football front to the different regulations with COVID. I mean, Steve, it's been a whirlwind, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I wrote a year in review piece for the Examiner the other day, and it's hard to believe how much stuff happened. I think I went into it thinking, "Oh, this will take me an hour and a half," and it took me about 3 hours because you forget just how much stuff's happened. No, completely sort of unprecedented year, and you know, obviously loads of things happening outside Huddersfield Town as well, but also a really, really busy year for the club when you think about, not to jump ahead too much, but you go right from the January transfer window all the way through to surviving relegation behind closed doors, making the change to bring in Carlos and everything since then. So yeah, it's been a busy year.
Yeah, because we talk about that January transfer window. It was one of the best windows Town had ever had. Do you remember we were talking about it? We were watching Miracle. They'd got some players out that we didn't. You know, you mean that didn't want to be at the club. You got players in. It was a really good window and looking really positive, and obviously it ended up keeping them in the division. So it was a good start to the year transfer window wise. We didn't know what was going to come like the rest of the world going crazy, but that was a decent January at least.
Yeah, some of those players, Matt Burton, have been fantastic as well. You think the likes of Harry Toffolo, obviously Richard Stearman, obviously before his injury, he did very well last year and the start of this year as well. And then Emile Smith-Rowe and the other loanies, of course, that help keep us in the league.
I mean, it's easy to forget that it's this year, this calendar year, that Emile Smith-Rowe was making his debut. Was that the Brentford game? I think it was, wasn't it? Like a 0-0 or something?
It was him and Toffolo and Stearman, and yeah.
Yeah. And you could see a real change in emphasis then. Obviously, the world, and we had some really good results leading up to when the world went nuts. I know I think it was the final game, the Leeds away game.
Yes.
Yeah.
With fans, and then, but a couple of weeks before that, I remember taking my little lad, and we'd beaten somebody. Was it 4-1?
4-0.
Absolutely spanked one in from 55 yards.
They'd beat Bristol City 2-1, and then which was, I think, probably the best attacking performance they had all year. And then they beat Charlton 4-0, and I think probably the result should have been reversed. But yeah, I mean that was sort of the last home game was that 4-0 against Charlton, and
it was just. You felt like they were getting a bit of a head of steam up, because I think the Leeds game was unfortunately always going to probably go that way. Yeah. And then obviously everything fell apart. But then I think out of the ashes of it, Toffolo for me is the one who has come on in leaps and bounds. Certainly going forward, he seems to he's got a great deal better under Carlos. But then defensively as well, I think he's a lot stronger. Even as this season's going on, it seems a little bit with the fullbacks over the last few weeks, and I don't know, greater minds than mine will know, but they seem to have dropped back a little bit. I don't know, is it compensating for the fact that the Bielsa thing, when it's usually after Christmas, isn't it? They sort of get exhausted and run out of steam and that sort of thing, and try and compensate for that a little bit.
I think it's partly that. I think it's also just the opposition have got onto the fact that Pippa and Harry Toffolo are such massive threats going forward, and they're doing a better job sort of keeping a man ahead of them, tight on them, and stopping them from bombing on quite so much and playing those 1-2s inside. So I think it's a combination of things.
So you see, with Jonathan Hogg coming back into a 3 as well, it allows them to have a little bit more room. And we saw the start again this season when, Armand Diakabi did that fantastic job covering for Toffolo when he was going forward, and which Mbenza does really well now. So I just think the fact that they work so much harder, it allows Pieper, Toffolo, like you just said there, to do so much more going forward, because they know they can have that trust in the fellas behind them, that they're not going to be exposed all the time. So it's a good team plan that's come in to really utilise those two lads.
Yeah, I think you're right though, sir. I'm going to call you sir. The lockdown did sort of kill that momentum, because as you say, I know people were unhappy with the Leeds result, and Town fans are always going to be unhappy about a defeat to Leeds, but I think better teams in the division had sort of worse days against Leeds last season, and they were sort of building up that head of steam. As you say, the results weren't always there, but we had started to see some of the performances were starting to come together, particularly after those Bristol and Charlton games. And Danny Cowley was very upbeat going into the Wigan game that came after lockdown, and then after they lost that, it just the confidence just seemed to evaporate out of the players. I think
because it was awful. That's like, because that build up to come back, and you just thought, come on. In the game after that, no one seems to remember. Actually, was a lot better, but that game, that comeback game, never expected that full high energy, and I think that was maybe the start of the Cowley's disappearance, because there was a lot of people watched it and listened to it and thought, oh no, this isn't good.
It was the big I follow day, wasn't it? Where everybody
no one could get on it.
Yeah, nobody could get on it for a start.
Unfortunately.
We were out of it by that point. Yeah.
The Wigan game though seemed to take everyone by surprise, didn't it? Yeah. I mean, the players, they were working so hard during that lockdown period, and then they came into that. Everyone was confident before it. Speaking of big game like this, hyping it up a lot, and then we go into that game, and to be fair, like Wigan went on an excellent run around that period and into the end of the season as well, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, but it was 7-8. Was it 7-8 game run or something?
Yeah, if they hadn't had the points deduction, they'd have comfortably stayed up. They were the Championship's form team at the end of the season, and I think that run actually started before the lockdown as well.
It did.
Paul Cook had them in excellent form, and they were, obviously unfortunate that events off the pitch overtook them. But you're right. I think people went into that game thinking. I don't think anyone thought they're not going to beat Wigan. I think everyone was looking at that Forest game the following week thinking, well, we're not going to get anything there, but we'll beat Wigan and we'll be fine, because they only needed after the break something like, was it 7 or 8 points to get to the 50? And you had 9 games left. And I think people were thinking, well, it's going to take quite a collapse for us not to get safe fairly early here. And I think that Wigan game was when everyone went, oh no, this could actually happen.
Matt, do you think that subconsciously gets through to the players if they know there's sort of 9 games left and there's only 7 or 8 points they need to get? Is there a sense that, well, it's going to happen at some point? So
I've been unfortunately, I've been in a relegation battle or two, and you think, oh, we've got 10 games left. We only need to win 3 of them. Then there's only 9 games left. We've only got to win 3 of them. And next thing you know, you're down to 6. It's like, oh no, we've got to win 3 of them. And it does. Your time disappears, and you have that. Not that you switch off, not at all. And that's what you have the psychologist for, and you have, your strong, big players, and that's what you need in the change room. But now and again, you can just think, yeah, it's all right, we've got Wigan, and then we've got a couple of games there. Then that Wigan game goes, that big 3 points goes. And in the end, to beat West Brom, just skipping on a little bit, sorry, to put the, the performance in against West Brom, and, the great goal by Smith Rowe, it was a huge mental task, because that was well, I remember looking at Oggy's face when they won as well and thinking, bloody hell, thank God for that. But it was a great afternoon.
Yeah.
I was just for that, just to add a bit of colour to that, for that West Brom game, me and my lady wife had gone away, because it was the last day of the school term. We'd gone away to where we got married, Ruddy Park, for the evening, and we were booked in to the restaurant. So obviously it wouldn't have gone down well to sit there at the table with the thing on. So I kept going to the gents, and that goal went in just as I'd gone to the gents.
They didn't think it was food. People at the restaurant think it was the food. While you were going to
no, it was very nice actually. Yeah. If you want to send me some vouchers. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that I mean that game was massive. I mean, before that they'd had sort of the 3-0 draws, which I think people sort of remember them as like three really dull games. And to be fair, that the Preston game, I think everyone was happy with the point at the time. I don't, because they'd just beaten Birmingham 3-0 as well. I think everyone was, because Preston were in good form at the time as well, and were the kind of team that had beaten Town, pretty consistently.
It was Sheffield Wednesday. Was that Stephen 0-0?
Yeah,
that was the first time in a stadium, because obviously me, Stephen, are there and we're in the stadium. They started piping through Sheffield Wednesday songs, didn't they?
Yeah.
I took my earphones off, went, what the bloody hell's that? And they were playing Sheffield Wednesday songs, like fans singing it. It was very peculiar.
Yeah,
they did it at Reading as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. The Reading game was the worst. A lot of them. I think that was the worst football match I've been at this year. It was dreadful, awful game. And then obviously they followed that up with the defeat to Luton, and that was when people really, really like the Wigan. After the Wigan game, it was pretty bad, but after the Luton game, people were like, "This is like we're knackered here." And the Wednesday game, I think people sort of remember that as a boring game like the Preston and Reading game. To be fair, that Wednesday game was really open. Both teams had chances, but neither of them could finish, which was obviously half the problem, which is half of why you ended up with those 0-0s anyway. But and in the end, those 3 points were just as important in the end as the 3 they got against West Brom. But yeah, I mean, obviously that was the moment of the year, the standout moment, that Smith Rowe goal late on, and it was a lineup, I think, when we got the team sheet, because they went 4-4-2, dropped Carl and Grant, and played a lineup that was basically just put all of your best tacklers on the pitch, and just defend against West Brom, just win the ball as quickly as you can and try and get up the pitch. And Chris Willock was absolutely magnificent the first half hour of that game, got his goal as well from a set piece. And it was a really deserved win. And that was a game as well I think people had sort of written off, because West Brom were going for the promotion. I think they just needed one more win to get automatic at that point, or to at least stay ahead of Brentford, who played the following day, and ended up losing as well, funnily enough. But I think everyone was already looking at the Millwall game on the last day and going, we're going to have to win at the Den, because we're not going to beat West Brom. And then they did. So that was the best interaction after the game we'd had for a long time as well, with the phone and everything else. And when it was a real sense of, through all the rubbish that we're all going through, away from football, everyone watched that game, everyone saw the result, no one saw it coming, like you said. And the positivity after the game was just phenomenal. Everyone went out. Well, people in the stadium and people that rang us up were just smiling, enjoyed it, and went, wow, where did that come from? But thoroughly enjoyed it and took the mind off everything else for 90 minutes, which is what football does.
It's exactly that, Matt. I think that game felt that way, that at the end of it, you felt, yeah, right, I remember now. Because we'd gone through those 0-0 games, and we'd gone through it. I remember stocking an entire bar, it felt like, outside, just for... me basically, for that first game back, thinking, here we go, because football's back, this is going to be amazing. You prepare for victory, and then it just sort of falls apart.
Drink anyway.
But all the way through, even apart from that Birmingham game, the Birmingham away game, where was it Birmingham? Where we won 3-0?
3-0.
And I thought there were a few just false starts along that way, but that West Brom game just sort of kicked things into action again. And that's why football is what it is. That's, even remotely, that's why, they're the sort of emotions that it evokes. But then Millwall sort of took that away quite quickly.
I remember that after the West Brom game, try to do the maths, and I'd worked out if they win, they're basically safe, because it was the Friday night as well, so it's before everyone else had played, and it was like, okay, so I think if they've won, they're basically safe. And then someone put the idea in my head, no, there's a way that they can go down. So I ended up deleting all the tweets.
I remember your Twitter feed. Twitter feed that night.
And then so many deleted.
I advocate myself, run out of fingers.
And then going, no, wait, I was right the first time. They are safe, and then having to put it all back up again.
I think if it was like a massive swing, wasn't it?
In the end,
it was like 10 goals or something.
They'd have had to lost 10-0 at Millwall. Yeah. Which, halfway there.
Nottingham Forest did it. They managed to get a 6-goal swing, so you never say. Yeah.
Always got to be careful, Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
Always be careful, especially with maths.
And obviously before that Millwall game, the Cowleys departed, which at the time people questioned. I mean, they were brought in, weren't they, to do a job to keep us in the Championship after what was a really difficult start to the season. Ultimately, they did that, but then the club decided to go into a different direction. Now, obviously, we know it with Carlos Corberan, but that kind of Millwall game at the end of the season was almost in preparation for this one, wasn't it? A load of academy kids came in for their first starts, and it had a bit of a different feel, didn't it?
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah.
I had a feel of the game that only meant something to the young lads that were going to make their debuts, and that was about it. Obviously, Schindler missed out on his perfect record. You know what I mean? Not many of us have got that. You know what I mean? So he missed out. I think he was just before injury. So you know what I mean? I could see Scoey's face when he's coming out, thinking, "Wow, I've got my chance here." Him and John Worthington, obviously, to take the team, and your captain pulls out half an hour before kickoff, which wasn't great. But some young lads came in, and you know what? It was a sunny afternoon. They were safe. It was time to move on. And I said on the show many a time, I was very happy with the chairman's decision, because I knew that it was going to be more attacking football. You know what I mean? There was going to be things going on, you know what I mean, on the pitch, which were going to be, you know what I mean, a lot better to watch. And you know what? As usual, I was right. So, yeah, it was, no, but it was. And I said after the game, I was happy because I could just see watching the same old. I'm dying for the Cowleys to get the job, because I want to see them do something in the Championship, and I think they deserve it, don't get me wrong. But I didn't want to watch it every week. I wanted someone like the Bielsa mold that's in there. I know we talk about Leeds a bit too much these days, but you wanted to see that. You wanted to see attacking and goals, and even if you're 2-0 up, let's get another one, because we might as well. We're here. And I think that's where it moved into. So obviously we had a very short break after the Millwall game, and that was it. Game on.
Yeah, sorry, Matt, go on.
No, go on. You go.
I was a lot more sceptical than Matt about it. I think everyone's aware of that. But I think the only thing I would say with the Cowleys is obviously they came in mid-season. They only had the one transfer window, and I think their pattern previously had been that they would be very pragmatic in the first season at a club, and then they would develop things later on in the second season. That's what they did at Lincoln. So I wonder if we might have seen a bit of a development in their style, to be fair to them. But I think it was. I mean, I wrote a piece at the time, and I've said this to Phil as well, that he was almost sort of staking his reputation as chairman on making this change. And to be fair, it has worked out. You know, it's worked out really well. And I think you saw that the reaction to Carlos getting his new contract on Christmas Eve, the fans were delighted with that. So, you know, credit to the club and credit to Phil and credit to Carlos, because it has worked out exactly as they intended it would. They've done what Carlos Carlos has done what the club wanted him to do. Easy for me to say, I know. Has done what the club wanted and said he would do, and there's still a way to go. You know, I think we've seen that things aren't perfect. There's still been some disappointing results, even just within the last few weeks, but you can see that things are sort of moving in the right direction. Not to skip ahead too far there, Matt.
What's it been like for you, Matt, as a supporter? Obviously, seeing the new brand of football, how much it's changed in the last 4 months.
It's been great, and it's been refreshing to see the shift from very pragmatic and sort of very workmanlike. You see the job, the job that needed doing for last season. Clearly, we need to stay in the division, and changing that. Sort of that losing culture really of what we'd inherited from the Premier League, and that needed to happen and did. But over the last sort of 4 months, it's been great. It's been just going into every game thinking, right, we've got a chance here, or there's a very good chance we'll come away with 3 points. And more than that, though, just enjoying watching a match has been great. And whether it's home, whether it's away, seeing that identity developing has been really great as well. I remember I was halfway up the second of 3 peaks when I got the ping through on my watch about the Cowleys, and I thought I must be hallucinating. What's that?
You're always out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
about.
They're the 2 times this year I've been away.
Whernside, it's a killer Whernside. I know that one well.
Yeah, and I thought, am I hallucinating here? And I looked at it again, and it's like, no, we're not. But managed to get around it. And then you can always tell who the manager's going to be. I suppose you guys probably knew anyway. But when there's only one person really in the running, sorry, this little guy, he's a big fan. When there's only really one person in the running for it, and that's the only person who's named, and it gets announced really, obviously from there it gets announced really quickly. It's something that clearly it was an idea about changing culture and changing direction for the whole club, not just the first team. And it's been good to see players who were previously underperforming performing really well, and that comes down to coaching, doesn't it? Quality of coaching.
In the start of the season, it was always going to be difficult, wasn't it, Matt? In terms of having a completely change your style of play, going from a man marking team to a space marking team. But equally, within those first games, the Norwich and Brentford, you could see developments and ideas, especially week on week. I mean, if you even think before Norwich, looking at the Rochdale game, how much we came on in that week in particular was really impressive.
Yeah, it was always going to take time. Say going from what they were to where they are now, it was always going to be a tough ask. And the Norwich game wasn't too bad, to be fair. For a starting point, when I talked about Daya Carby that day, yes, he's disappeared since. But, that day there, he did a job, and you saw them going forward. They weren't as forward attacking as they are now. But it was the first game of the season against, are they top of the league now, Norwich? You know what I mean? A team that's kept most of the players from Premier and added 13 players, I think it was, their squad. So it was always going to be really tough. But you've seen week in, week out, I mention it every time on the show, even when they get beat, I'm not that disappointed as where a year ago I was disappointed, because you can see they're still trying to do the right things. I don't want to skip forward again at the start of the season, but Bournemouth the other week when they got battered. But Bergovic makes a great save at 1-0 off a deflected shot off Bakuna, and he makes another save and another save. You know what I mean? There's only mistakes at the back that cost him. Still trying to do the right things all the time. But going back to, say, them early starts of the season, I could see straight away what the manager was trying to do. And it was always going to take a bit of time just for players to learn. You've got Jonathan Hogg in there as well, who's used a bit more sideways back, doing that more defensive, trying to bomb forward, trying to, get his head forward all the time and succeeding with it as well more often than not. So it was, it was exciting times. Tough, because results weren't always there, but actual performance-wise, you could see where they were going, and you can still see where they're going now.
Yeah. I think the Norwich game, they were within sort of 10 minutes of getting the result, or 11 minutes, I think it was, when Richard Stearman committed his back pass, and it was just one of those unfortunate things that can happen in a game. I think that the Brentford game the following week, people sort of obviously had concerns because they'd lost to Rochdale, they'd lost to Norwich. I think people had sort of accepted the Norwich result, but I think losing 3 to Brentford when Brentford was so dominant as well.
Brentford were good. Brentford were excellent.
This is it. Yeah, that's the thing. I remember they saying, they announced the Carol Lighton signing within a few hours of the final whistle, and it almost sort of got lost because the fans were
a little bit of politics.
Yeah, well, people didn't know what to expect going into this season is the thing. Yeah. And I think that I would count myself in this. I've made sort of no secret of it. I was concerned myself because you looked at the players that left and you thought, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to sort of move up the league here. But as you say, that it's the value of good coaching and giving other players a chance and bringing others back into the fold, like Isaac and Benzer, who's been one.
Josh Corberan, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Doing that Carlin Grant thing brilliantly. You take a slice from West Brom, thank you very much for my wheelbarrow. And then we've got a lad who just comes straight in there, and got fitter, got better every week. And he's been superb. It's a real shame he's going to be out for a little bit longer. But he's another one who's had faith given to him. And you've seen Edmonds Green's doing the same now. And people going out saying, you've got to sign, don't spend all your money. You know what I mean? Especially this moment in time. But they've got players in the squad they knew would come in and do that job. And that's exactly what they've done. Even Benzer, he's like a new signing. You know what I mean? He's like a new signing. Yes. So it's people coming to the squad. Kroma and Benzer, Edmonds Green. Critchlow's been in there as well. Pieper, 500 grand? Yeah, I think Matt paid more than that for his kitchen that he's just left. You know what I mean? So
booted out. Been booted out.
It's great to see that. By the way, Matt, I loved your kitchen. By the way, I can't believe you've left it.
Yeah. Well, blame them. Take away Nando.
The
table.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the whole point, though, isn't it? In terms of the coaching, Carlos was brought in to develop the rough diamonds as such, like the Josh Coromas that we have in the building, and he's certainly done that, hasn't he? I mean, like you said, Josh has flown Romani.
But if you give them license to go forward, and it's not all about defending all the time. You know, I mean, attacking players who want to score goals, put crosses in, get shots off, they're going to have a smile on their face and a bounce in the step. And it's not all, you know what I mean, coached to death. It's, you know what I mean, even though they do a lot in training, they do a lot of work, I know they do, but you can see they've got license to go forward, cross it, shoot, you know what I mean, and just don't worry too much about getting back because we've got other people there doing a job for you.
It feels like they're really clear about the roles within that as well. And
that's what I was gonna say, Matt. Yeah, carry on.
It's good to see, and it's sort of you expect what's going to happen if Josh Coroma gets it, or in that particular role, whoever's in that pocket of the field, in that position, and whoever slips into the fullback, you know what the situation is going to be, and you know how they're going to play, and it all comes down then, I suppose, to individual ability and skill. But there's from what I've seen from Josh Coroma this season, I think if we'd had the last season's Carlin Grant against this season Josh Coroma, I'd take this season's Josh Coroma anytime. I think he's a more exciting, not that it's, they're exactly the same player, but I think he's a more exciting player, obviously coming in off the left. It's a similar sort of role. And I think, yes, it comes down to obviously ability and potential, but it comes down to the way that the coach, obviously the responsibility that a young player has been given to go out there and express himself. And I think it's just been fantastic. It's great to see this player growing and growing and growing. And then obviously unfortunate injury when what was he doing? Did he sort of try and do like a fancy flick with his right foot or something and then do his knee or something?
Never attempted
his
hamstring.
Yeah. I wasn't at that game, oddly enough. It was one of my days off. But
wow.
Outrageous.
I know. I've missed.
He's like a bloody teacher.
I've missed
to
2
fair,
games.
Matt, you can't
all
speak.
year.
Where were you on Boxing Day?
Yeah,
I did wonder that. Yeah.
Well, on Boxing Day.
Yeah.
That was my one day. Hey, I've been making Huddersfield beautiful for the last 4 weeks. You know what I mean? It's not easy.
But no, I mean, they had that after they had sort of that difficult start. They had that 4-game unbeaten run, didn't they? And I think that Forest game, to be fair, Forest have shown that they're not up to much this season, and I think it was apparent on the day that Forest were off their game in front of the Sky cameras. Yeah, and then you had that frustrating draw against Rotherham where they'd sort of nicked a goal and then just sat back and hoofed it for the rest of the game. But
weirdly, I thought that Rotherham game, in a way, felt like a real turning point because it felt like they didn't start booting it down the field. They didn't start sort of coming away from the philosophy. I think in previous seasons we would have seen, right, okay, we've got 10 minutes to go and 1-0 down, let's hoof it up and stick some centre halves up front or whatever. But they didn't. They kept sticking. I remember seeing, because that was Naby Sarr's first game, I think. Yeah. And then the number of sort of small passes he played, but small positive passes, and Hoggy dropping in, it felt like that identity really started to sort of you could see it there. You could see it in sparks against Forest, and obviously with the goal and the overlap and overloading the left back area. But it felt like that Rotherham game, they obviously deserved that equaliser, albeit it's rather fortuitous the way it went in. But it felt like, right, okay, you can see what they're trying to do now.
And I know that there's people at the club that felt the same way. Actually, they were
included.
Yeah, exactly. Although they didn't get the result,
great minds, see.
Yeah, exactly.
The days of sticking the hef up front, getting the hef up front for the last 10 minutes. They were dark days. Not sure what Mr. Wagner was thinking, but yes, get the hef up.
But just the control that they had on that game, I think was Carlos was delighted with that and the way, although as you say the result didn't come, just the fact that they had control through the possession, and they were constantly on the attack, and they had them under pressure the whole game. He was really pleased with that. And sometimes football's just like that. But the Swansea game that followed, almost the exact opposite. I thought Town really rode their luck in that game, that they needed some great last ditch defending and a couple of missed sitters. But again, we always say teams make their own luck to a certain extent, and sometimes that goes against you, but sometimes it goes for you. And Town were very positive, and I think that it was Josh Cromer's winner, that wasn't it? Really important goal, and to win away at a team that has aspirations on the playoffs, it's just not the kind of result that Town got too often last year. I think I can think of Brentford, and that was about it. So I think that even if there was a bit of luck involved, I think that was a bit of a statement, that one, to say, we are going to be competitive in most games we come up against, and I think sometimes they've not found that fluidity or that slice of luck you need, and sometimes they've not been quite as defensively solid as they should be. But they've always had they've had it often enough that they've been able to put these results together, and they're not losing sort of 2 games on the bounce even very often now. The last time they were 2 on the bounce was back in October. They do tend to bounce back for victories, and that feeling that if they lose one game, they're then going to go and lose the next 2 or 3 has gone now, which is good. And I know that they didn't lose that many in a row. They didn't lose 3 in a row too often last year either, after the Cowleys came in. In fact, I think it was only the once, but you felt like they were going to, and I don't think you feel like that anymore.
It felt like a foregone conclusion a lot of the time last season, and it felt like, here we go, football. But now it's like looking forward to it. Like tonight, I'm looking forward to it, and it's. You say we've not lost 2 in a row, Stephen. Last time I did this show was 5-0 against Cardiff, I think. So,
yeah. But like we said, there was that kind of spell of inconsistency, wasn't there, after a very good run of form. But more recently, I'm thinking, starting with Middlesbrough at the back end of November, our home form has been fantastic. I think we've won 4 on the bounce, 5 unbeaten at the John Smith Stadium, and some of the stuff, Matt, that we've been playing has been excellent, hasn't it? Some of the transitions going forwards and the movement.
Well, the Middlesbrough game, Middlesbrough were in charge for a small portion of the game. Then Huddersfield just took over. And Middlesbrough weren't quite the long ball everyone thought they were going to be. Warnock either. They've got some good players in that team. And, and they caused Huddersfield some problems. But to get the win, it shows such strength, and to keep doing what they were doing as well, and just keep believing all the way through. It was, again, that was a big game, the Middlesbrough game. And then obviously the home games kept coming, 2-0s, 2-0s, 2-0s. And yeah, even without a crowd there, you're still breaking this illusion that home games don't count anymore because there's not a crowd there. So obviously we've seen so many inconsistent results since crowds haven't been allowed in stadiums. Huddersfield Town are breaking that trend a little bit by getting some decent results at home, and then picking up bits away from home as well.
Yeah, some of the football, Steve. I mean, the QPR game sticks out in particular. It was a very kind of open game, and QPR, to an extent, kind of played into our hands in terms of how we wanted to play. But again, some of that movement was absolutely breathtaking at times.
Yeah, it was a game that could and probably should have been killed off earlier than it was, but it ended up being a pretty routine 2-0 victory, and that was followed up by another one a couple of days later against Sheffield Wednesday. And again, it's putting those sort of routine wins together that's been missing. Oddly enough, I think QPR was one of the only ones they had last season as well. They beat them 2-0 back in, was it January?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really good to see. And I think obviously that Bournemouth game does stand out, the 5-0 and the 3-0 against Cardiff as well. But in between those games, you had, that they beat QPR and Sheffield Wednesday with clean sheets, and then they kept clean sheets against Coventry, and probably most impressively against Watford, a very, very good Watford side, who again were slightly off on their day, but Town absolutely deserved to win. So you've seen that they can do the job at both ends on their day. I think it's just now finding that consistency, because we've still seen that with the Bournemouth and the Barnsley games, there's still sort of every 1 in 3 games the defensive lapses do creep in.
I think they are learning though. They are learning now that now and again you have to put your foot through it, and it's as simple as that. You can't always play everything from the back all the time. And I mean, Stoke away, I've said it a million times, Campbell, because there's no one in the ground, you can hear him shouting press and squeeze, and he still play at the back, and Stearman scores the own goal. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, and you're thinking at some point you're going to have to go along. And I think in the last few games, not all the time, because you don't have to do it all the time. You know what I mean? Schofield in goal he's put his left foot through it a couple of times, his right foot through it a couple of times. Still played from the back, still a little bit heart attack football for me now and again, but they got away with it. But just that, every now and again, just get rid of it. I don't care how old-fashioned I sound, because you're right. Sometimes you've got to, because teams just press and press and press. And go back to the QPR and Sheffield Wednesday games. That's what they did do well. Sheffield Wednesday and QPR, it was a lazy press, don't be wrong, but they recognised that. They just played all the time. Thank you very much. Pop, pop, pop. Nipped it round them and made them look like two very, very average teams. You know what I mean? So they recognised the situation where it was only Windass on his own running around like a headless chicken. Just played round him. Thank you very much. QPR, again, I saw they did a press, this 3-man press. My God, the gaps were unbelievable. It was like the parting of the sea. You know what I mean? It was absolutely ridiculous. Just played through it and off they went. But it was good that they recognised the fact that they didn't have to go long. We'll play all day long against these lot because they've got no plan. Whereas the other week, I think it was the Watford game, a couple of times, Scott's gone bang, right, and just put my foot through the back, and we're not going to take any chances. And it was great to see.
Yeah, and then there was obviously the disappointment, like you said, Matt, earlier on for you and everyone else on Boxing Day, the defeat to Barnsley. But equally in that, we might not have created a large amount of chances, but both goals came from kind of similar mistakes, didn't they? I suppose if you can cut those out, then equally we'd have come away with a point, if not all three, on a different day.
Yeah, I think there were enough chances there so that you didn't leave feeling, or you didn't leave your kitchen or lounge feeling that this Christmas season or festive period is going to be miserable in a footballing sense. I think it was a pretty turgid second half, wasn't it? And you look back at the chances we had in the first half, a couple of crosses over towards Campbell, and then that incredible ball through from Johnny Ogg just after the goal that went to Fraser, and argue that if it crept the other side of the post, you'd have been talking about the goal of the weekend. It's another one that you could argue could have been put to bed in the first half rather than hanging on with 94 minutes. And I thought when that throw-in came in, when they got that throw-in, I thought, right, game over, this is done. And then it went in, and I was fuming. But then you reflect on it and you think we could have taken it in the second half. There were enough chances. I think Bakuna squared one just over people's heads, and there's enough hope there so that you're not feeling that right. We've had our 8 wins this season. We're going to be scrapping from the end to the end of the season. It was just one of those games that could have gone for us. It could have gone for them. Unfortunately, it went for Barnsley. But these things have a habit of turning around, don't they?
Matt are feeling exactly like you are, and that's what the good thing is. Nobody's come away and going, you know what I mean? This desperate feeling that they're never going to win a game again. Everyone's upbeat and can't wait for the next game because, like I say, you're going to see something special tonight. You'll see something great tonight. They'll score a great goal or they'll do something really good and something you'll really enjoy tonight. Don't know what it is yet, you know what I mean? But it will happen, and people are a lot more positive going into, I think, every single game.
And that's why it's so good, isn't it, that Carlos has signed a new deal with us, because everyone has this optimism. We've seen what he can do in terms of changing a style of play when realistically he hasn't had a full pre-season yet because the pre-season was cut short. He hasn't really had a lot of time on the grass because of how congested the schedule's been. But equally, we've seen how he's changed the style of play, how he's helped develop players that people had previously written off or that weren't really getting a look in. And Steve, that's why this is so great, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's why you've had that sort of big positive reaction to the news that you got on Christmas Eve. As I say, everything's not perfect. There's still things that need to come together. I think they need to work out how to play without Josh Coroma from open play, because we've not had too many goals sort of built up through moves recently. It's been sort of set pieces or forcing opposition errors, and as I say, you get those defensive lapses creeping in now and then. But with tired legs and the busy schedule, you expect that to happen. And we've talked repeatedly about the fact that after this game and the Reading game at the weekend, the schedule does slacken off a little bit. You get in a week between games more often than not after the Reading game, and I think that's going to be massive, because you can only do so much. We've talked before, Matt. There's no replacement for time on the pitch, and we know that Carlos does a lot of video sessions. We've had players on this show talking about that before as well. But there is no replacement for time on the pitch. And when you've got players who are constantly having recovery days, and players who are coming in and out of injury and little knocks and niggles, you don't get too much of that time. And I think it's going to be invaluable after January. And we should, to be fair, I mean, there's a tendency sort of from us and from me really, that after a defeat you go back and you say, oh well, these are all the same errors we've seen all season, and it's not that, actually. It's just that you obviously, after a defeat, you emphasize the negatives, and after a defeat you emphasize the positives. Those positives and negatives tend to be there in sort of equal measure in or not quite in equal measure in both games, but they're always sort of there. It's just that you're talking about one or the other after a defeat or a win. And we're talking about sort of the negatives after that Barnsley game, but there's plenty of positives that we talked about after the Watford game as well, that you feel like they are going to carry into other games going forward.
You want to say roller coaster, Stephen, don't you?
Yeah.
See you gagging for to say roller coaster.
Roller coaster.
Take each game as it comes. We all do.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. And then talking of that, obviously tonight we take on Blackburn Rovers. They're 11th in the table, obviously just above us. They've only won one in their last 6. It's another good opportunity, isn't this, Matt?
Well, I hope so. I've just dug my driveway out. So, on my neighbour's driveway as well. It's a little bit thicker on for the snow today, but I'm sure I'll make it. Yeah, it is. It's another game now. We talked about, in the away game, bit of a tricky one, and 94th minute long throw as well, and you've got plenty of people in the box. It stings a little, let's put it that way. But we know they're strong enough just to get over it, shrug it off and say, right, let's go on with it tonight. It's going to be a cold, wet one, and that's just for me and Oggy, you know what I mean? So it's on the pitch once they get going. I think they'll be fine tonight. It'll be zippy, let's put it that way. Just looking outside now, yeah, I'm glad I've got my little mini heater with me, because it's going to be a cold one, but I think they'll be more than fine, and they'll get a sweat on early doors and put Blackburn to the sword.
What do you make of this one, Steve?
Two very high-scoring teams. I think Blackburn have got the same record as Bournemouth. They're both sort of, I think, is it 35 goals are scored after the 21 games. I don't have the league table in front of me. I think that's right. And they're just getting Bradley Dack back as well. They've been without him for a year. I mean, it's almost which defense is gonna stand up to it better today, because both teams are going to be going for it. Both teams are teams that like to win by a couple of goals rather than try to nick one. It could be hopefully an exciting one, although I feel like I say that every week. But no, it's it on paper it has a lot of promise.
Yeah, and Matt Burton, obviously for you as a supporter, last game of 2020, obviously you can't be here, but equally going into the new year, just a win would lift everyone's spirits again, wouldn't it?
Yeah, thanks for rubbing it in, Adam. Appreciate that. It's just that we played a couple of days ago, and it's nice to be going into this one thinking, right, there's a very good chance against a good side. I think if we can learn to play without Josh Coroma, and there's a viable alternative on that left hand side, and sort of tweak the system to do that, I think that then there's very good reason to be optimistic for this game, but not just this game, January and February as well. Until perhaps he's back, he's going to take a bit of time to get up to speed, I would have thought. But I'm optimistic about this one. I'm not going to put a number on it because I did last time and it came back to bite me.
I don't blame you. Guys, just before we end, signing of the season, the year even, 2020. Who has been your signing of 2020?
Well, let's do
Yeah, it's Harry Toffolo, I think. £500,000 or thereabouts from Lincoln. And he's been probably Town's best player over the calendar year. I would say, he's dropped off a little bit from where he was at the start of the season over the last couple of games, but from where he was, that's no major criticism. He's still doing absolutely fine. And yeah, he's been a real revelation at left back.
Yeah, I'd go either Benzer or Toffolo. So I'm gonna say Toffolo as well, but I think Pieper's brilliant as well. A right back who nutmegs people in the opposition 18-yard box, comes inside, gets shots off, and likes to play midfield when really sometimes you should stay in right back. But I think he's excellent. But Toffolo for his, for every game that he's played and how well he's done, and just getting up and down and his constant energy. And so many people complain that they can't play every game anymore. And I'm tired and I've got muscle fatigue and I've had a knock and all this rubbish. He just plays every week and he puts ridiculous amounts of, miles in his legs as well. So, yeah, I think you're right there, Stephen. Toffolo's got to be the man.
Matt B?
I don't disagree with that. I think just for the benefit of throwing some of the names in there, I think Carlos we've got to look at as a particularly good signing, not in a playing sense, but from that leadership sense. And I think, paying testament to it's a brave decision for him to come away from a club where, they've obviously done what they've done and they are where they are. But to stake his claim on his own in the climate that we're in a club that still arguably had a bit of a hangover from the Premier League about it, and to do what he's done in the short space of time that he's done it, with those, I think having those real advocates around him and those players that he's brought in like Pieper, who's really just shown us what that style of play is, along with Toffolo. But also you've got to look at somebody like Naby Sarr who plays it out the back. Yes, there's a few mess ups there, but I remember listening to you a couple of weeks ago, Matt, when you said on the commentary that Naby Sarr he's got a lot of the attributes. If he didn't make a single mistake, then he wouldn't be playing for Town. He'd be a Champions League winning centre half. He's got everything about him. But I think there's a lot, and one of the biggest winners this year has been the progress that those players have made. Who a year ago we were sort of saying, "Oh, get them out, they don't care," and particularly Isaac and Benzer, who Town fans are now arguing on forums and Twitter about the length of his next contract and how long that should be, and that's it's very refreshing to see that in an age where we're very throwaway, aren't we, as a culture, not just football. We sort of, if something doesn't work, we just say, right, off you go, see you later. Hard graft has gone in, and he's obviously worked and he cares, and it's really turned around for him. It's great to see.
Your standout game, Steve?
I think the West Brom probably stands in the memory. When we think back on 2020 in sort of 5-10 years' time, that'll be the one that jumps to the top of everyone's mind. But I also really enjoyed the Middlesbrough game this season. If we're going on one from this season, that game was a lot of fun. And also a quick shout as well to that Bristol City game back in February, just before lockdown. As I say, I thought that was Town's best attacking performance of the year, oddly enough, and should have been probably 4-1 against a decent team that were up in the playoffs. But it's hard to look past that West Brom game.
Matt?
Go on, Matt, I'll let you go first.
All right. I'm not for necessarily football reasons. The 4-0 against Charlton was the first game where my little lad's gone to Theo. He was freezing, but he had his skins and his full kit on, even the socks, and he loved it. And I could see the first game where he really fallen in love with going to the ground and the match. And I had a couple of pints. I went to Magic Rock. It was just one of those days that throughout the rest of the year I've been thinking, oh my goodness me, I can't wait to get days like that back. He loved it. We went with some of our friends, and it was just a really good day. And also we won handsomely, which was great.
That one actually stands out, doesn't it? Because it was the last time that the supporters were at the John Smith Stadium as well. I mean, a fantastic day, a fantastic atmosphere. Like that's exactly where we want to get back to.
Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, for me again, it's a bit like Stephen. You know, I mean, the West Brom game, but I enjoyed the Millwall away. I enjoyed Fraser Campbell's bicycle kick against Forest. For me, there's been, like I say it every week, there's been pockets of games which have just been absolutely outstanding. You know what I mean? Sometimes they've lasted 10 minutes, sometimes they've lasted 20. You know what I mean? And there's sometimes been 3 or 4 of them in a game. So for me, it's been individual bits of every game have just been absolutely superb. But then there's obviously been the odd mistake, but I'm not going to talk about that because we're talking about the best. And for me, I can't really pin an exact full 90 minutes. I just know I've seen sections of games this season that I've gone, yeah, I've really enjoyed that. And I'd have enjoyed it more if I could hear 25,000 screaming people who should really be there, you know what I mean, enjoying it along with us. Because, you know what I mean, me and Oggy feed off the crowd just as much as the players do and the rest of the fans doing that as well. So, you know what I mean, it's a big miss for us. And especially when you see it, you know what I mean, Campbell doing bicycle kicks after a great ball down the ringer, a cut back to him. You know what I mean, and Benza's free kicks recently and things like that. It's just a real shame everyone's not there. So for me, I'm not going to pinpoint one game. I'm going to say I've just enjoyed, you know what I mean, large sections of lots of games this season.
Yeah, and last one, Steve, moment of the season. Could be anything.
This season or this year?
This year.
Right. Again, the Smith Rowe goal, obviously against West Brom, but that's quite a boring answer, isn't it?
It's not. Don't you remember how long it takes to go in just a little outside of the right?
Yeah, I know.
Bit of movement. It's like, my God, how's he done that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was an exceptional player, fantastic to watch. You know what I mean? For young lad, just his movement, the way he was. So no, because you're allowed to relish the ball going in the back of the net. It took that long. I'd say it was quite a good moment.
Yeah. I also, oh no, this was last year. Ignore that. I was going to say when Jonathan Ogg took out that ball boy, but that was last December. I've just had a quick Google, so we'll have to skip that.
Matt B?
For me, weirdly, I think that Pieper equaliser against Rotherham, it felt like a moment for a lot of reasons, and it was the first time I follow works for me as well, which was good.
Last but not least, Matt.
The Campbell bicycle kick, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, Forest weren't great that day, but they had a lot of talent on the pitch, a lot of very expensive footballers on that pitch for Forest. Just the whole move, you know what I mean? Then cut back and smash back of the net. It was like just absolutely superb. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be a decent watch this season.
There is another one that sprung to mind, actually, Adam.
I just Googled it again. So it's sprung to anyone's mind.
I've been looking at the results. No, it's the after the Swansea game, Adam. I remember standing next to you when this happened. The celebration. Yeah. I think it was Josh Koroma, Janini Bakuna, and Isaac Mbenza, and the three of them just sort of chasing after each other up the wing and squirting the water bottles at each other and giving each other a big hug. That was a really nice moment, and that was why that Swansea game sort of felt like, okay, there's something happening here.
Yeah, certainly a big moment in the Carlos era. Steve, Matt Glennon, Matt Burton, thank you very much for joining us. Town fans, from everyone at Huddersfield Town, I hope you have a very happy new year. Thank you for watching.